Good day to everyone. My name is Jomar Balagat from the city of Ilagan, Isabela. Currently connected to the Department of Education as junior high school teacher. Just sit back, relax, and have some fun in learning the subject, Instructional Planning and Procedures. Now, I want to offer you this simple video as I was assigned to discuss to you the last subtopic of this chapter, which is Chapter 2. Under Lesson 2.5, determine if there is a special need for the course Special Learners Instructional Program. But before that, let me share to you what are expected learning or objectives to be learned, of course, after this discussion. First, what is special education? Second, identify the needs of the special learners. And lastly, explain the instructional program made for the special learners. To begin with, what is special education? Special education is a form of learning provided to students with exceptional needs, such as students with learning disabilities or mental challenges. Any of several educational services designed for students with learning difficulties, mental health problems, or other disabilities. One of the most rewarding specializations within the field of special education, the Early Intervention Credential enables a teacher to work with children from birth to kindergarten. Early intervention specialists can work inside a preschool classroom but must provide individual services to children within their homes. Special education teacher can work directly to school districts in the Department of Education, such as the Schools Division of the City of Ilagan, wherein two central schools here are offering special education or the SPED. An special education teacher can also be hired through regionally based programs such as the DSWD. A special education teacher can also be a medical providers, like for example, he or she can work at a mental hospitals or a partner or assistant of a psychologist, etc. A special education teacher can also be employed in the private education companies like a private schools offering special education. An ideal teacher must understand that a student with special needs such as learning disabilities need to be taught differently or need some accommodations to enhance the learning environment. Not everyone learns in the same way, and you can follow some tips to create a well-rounded learning. Because of the diversity of learners, we teachers are always encouraged to adopt differentiated instruction and activities in order to address different learning styles of our learners. So we teachers must always consider to put differentiated activities and instruction in constructing our lesson plan. And sometimes we can make these inputs during motivation, evaluation, assessment, or assignment. Children who receive early intervention services generally have more severe physical, cognitive, behavioral, or communication delays than children who are identified later. So their individualized education program or the IEP goals are usually more developmental than academic. Though it may seem to be the casual observer that the early intervention specialists are simply playing with these children. The exercises and games that these teachers use are actually designed to support critical skills development. In fact, education research proves again and again that the earlier a child with disability receives special education support, the better. The purpose of special education is to provide equal access to education for children ages birth through 21 by providing specialized services that will lead to school success in the general curriculum. This is just a manifestation that no child will left behind. If your child's healthcare provider, teacher, other interested party, or you suspect that your child may be eligible for special education services, it is helpful to know what to expect and where to begin. The following information is an outline of the special education process and brief description of its elements. But before that, let me play this video for more information with regards to special education.
My son Max has lots of energy and no interest in reading. At school, it was becoming a problem. But my sister's a teacher, and she wondered if Max might need some form of special education. And I said, no way! He's perfect! But she said he can be perfect and still have special needs. She said special education is an umbrella term for all sorts of challenges. Some issues are obvious, but some are harder to identify. I ignored her, but over time, my bright boy seemed to lose his bounce. He stopped wanting to go to school. He said he was stupid. It broke my heart. Turns out, we're not alone. Many kids have learning challenges, and there's a law called IDEA, which guarantees every child with a disability a free and appropriate public education. In fact, if a learning problem is suspected, public schools are legally required to have the child evaluated, but families may have to request it. If the child's eligible, teachers, specialists, and parents make an individualized education program, that's IEP in EduSpeak, or a 504 plan. Legal documents which set forth what the school will do for the child. Sounds simple, right? Well, it rarely is. In Max's case, his first plan didn't have what he needed. Thanks to my sister, I learned that in order to get Max the right support, I might have to be, well, persistent. She helped me research Max's options. Most students getting special services stay in their ordinary classrooms, but get extra support like tutoring or extra time on tests. Some students end up in separate classrooms with specialized teachers, but spend part of the day with non-disabled peers. Finally, a few schools, most of them private, only serve students with specific needs like autism or dyslexia. I found the best path for my child, and you can too. Worried your child might need something special? Do your research. Go to great schools and visit a range of schools. With your help, your child will thrive.
Do you found that video informative? If yes, then I'm glad to hearing that from you, because it's just really a quick review on the guidelines of special education. So this is the outline of a special education process and brief description of its elements. First step is identifying a need, followed by formal assessment, and then the individualized education program meeting, and after that, the placement accommodations and special services, and the last step is the annual triennial reviews and progress monitoring. The first step is identifying a need. Children may be diagnosed with disability by a medical provider or by a school district. However, one must understand that being simply diagnosed with a disability is not a guarantee of services under the Individualized with Disabilities Education Act or the IDEA. Having a disability is the first question when determining if a student qualifies. The evaluation team must also answer two additional questions. Does the ability impact the child's educational progress? Does the child need a specially designed instruction, which is the IDEA definition of special education? Students who have physical disabilities or developmental delays are often identified early by a pediatrician or other medical provider. These students may have a wide range of academic difficulties depending on the severity of the delay, and some may have no difficulties at all. Fortunately, because they are often diagnosed before entering the school system, most children with physical disabilities or developmental delays enter school with special education structure in place. Students with learning disabilities often face a different scenario. They may struggle through the first year of their education before their disabilities are identified. Part of the reason for this is the local school district's dependence upon the discrepancy method. In addition, students with learning disabilities often lack the physical or social differences that identify students with physical impairments or developmental delays. That is, they look and act just like their peers without disabilities. Also, much of the instruction delivered in the lowest grade level is skill-based. This means that your child is learning skills such as reading, writing, and basic arithmetic. If he or she can read a word or solve a basic math problem, he or she will have relatively few problems in these grades. Starting around the third grade, however, students are expected to apply those skills to learn more information, and those with previously undetected disabilities may begin to struggle. For instance, your child may have been a B student in reading throughout first and second grade, earning an average of 80% on reading and spelling tests. However, if he or she is only able to read 80% of the words taught in first and second grade, how is he or she supposed to read and comprehend a textbook written at fourth grade level? It is next to impossible, and your child will continue to fall behind in all subjects. This is referred to as widening gap. The gap between a child with a disability knows and what his or her peers know only widens as he or she advances to higher grades. RTI stands for Response to Intervention and is used to identify students with learning disabilities or other academic delays. In the past, students with learning or other disabilities were not given any specialized assistance until their academic performance was significantly lower than their ability indicated it should be. In other words, smart kids had to consistently fail before they received help. Even worse, those students had to wait so long for assistance that, as they waited, they fell further and further behind their peers, making it much more difficult for them to catch up. When the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was reauthorized in 2004, the legislators, with the assistance of the Office of Special Programs, recommended the use of a better way of identifying students with disabilities that also provide immediate assistance to struggling students. It is based on the idea that a student needs to master each skill that he or she learns. This means that he or she must be able to demonstrate the use of a skill with mastery and be able to do consistently. If a student does not master a skill the first time around, the teacher will then give the student more intensive support until the student can demonstrate mastery. The support becomes increasingly intensive, which usually means that more than time is dedicated to working on a single skill, until the student can show that he or she has mastered the skill. If a child continues to fail to respond to interventions, he or she may have learning disability or an undiagnosed developmental impairment. If this is the case, the teacher will likely refer the student for assessment. It is important to note that the purpose of RTI is to prevent school districts from relying wholly on what's called the discrepancy method for identification of a specific learning disability. Most school districts use RTI to provide interventions for struggling students, but the districts do not use the results of their intervention as the data that the law requires to identify a student as having a disability. The second step of the process is the formal assessment. So formal assessment is a systematic, pre-planned test that allow us to measure how well a student has mastered learning outcomes. In other words, this formal assessment is used to assess overall achievement to compare a student's performance with others at their age or grade, or to identify comparable strengths and weaknesses with peers. If your child has not responded to intensive interventions, it may be time to evaluate for a learning disability or other delay. More detailed information regarding assessment and referral for services can be found in the importance of assessment process and the EIP process. Assessment are diagnostic tools. They do not contain answers or solutions. These tests are designed to provide an overview of your child's academic performance, basic cognitive functioning, and or his or her current strengths or weaknesses. They can also test hearing and vision. Assessment are not able to predict your child's future performance, nor his or her ability. They are excellent tools because they can break your child's academic performance down into the subsets, such as reading comprehension, spelling and basic arithmetic. They can also rule out simple problems such as hearing or vision impairments, which may be affecting learning. This information is invaluable because it guides the educational process. Teachers can write goals for your child and you can request services based on information found within this assessment. It is important to remember that not every child who struggles academically will qualify for special education services. Assessment might show that your child does not have learning disability or impairment that qualifies him or her for these services. However, that does not mean that your child is lazy, is stupid, or not trying. If your child is struggling but does not qualify for special education, it is imperative that you keep looking for solutions. Work with your child's teacher and other school services providers to draft an action plan that will address your child's individual needs. Step 3. The Individualized Education Program and Meeting. If your child is diagnosed with learning disability or other qualifying impairment, the next step is to draft an Individualized Education Program or the IEP for him or her. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act or the IDEA gives the school district 30 days from the documentation of the disability to complete an IEP. Parents must give permission for placement as a part of the initial IEP. A guide to IEPs can be found in the IEP process. Explained, but here is some general information regarding IEPs to get you started. Once your child learning disability is identified, you will attend an IEP meeting every year until he or she graduates or stop receiving special education. It is imperative that you attend these meetings. It is here that the team will review your child's academic progress, write new academic goals, and discuss placement and transition plans as well as accommodations and modifications. It is forum for exchanging ideas and the IEP team members can offer you invaluable support. If you cannot attend these meetings in person, find a way to participate. IEP team are eager to consider options such as your attendance via speakerphone or Skype. You are the one who knows your child the best. The IEP team members need your input. Do not be surprised by how many people attend IEP meetings. The law requires that 5 positions are represented at each IEP team meeting. Those 5 positions that need representation are the parent, the special education teacher, the general education teacher, a person who can interpret test information, and a district representative. The fourth step in the process is the placement, accommodations, and special services. During the very first IEP meeting and during all that follow, your child placement will be discussed. This means that the team will determine the most appropriate environment for your child. Remember that your child is entitled to receive services in an environment that is as close to general education setting as possible. It is important that you know why the team recommends one placement over another. Remember that the IEP team should be able to use data such as test scores, work samples, and behavioral charts to support any placement recommendation. If the team is recommending a change of replacement, arrange a tour of new classroom. If you are ever uncomfortable with a placement recommendation, try to work with the IEP team to come up with a better alternative. The IEP team will also discuss classroom accommodations and specialized services, such as speech therapy in order to treat speech and communication disorders, occupational therapy to help improve the motor skills involved in everyday tasks like writing and getting dressed, and adaptive physical education to give the learner the skills necessary for a lifetime of rich leisure, recreation, etc. For the parents, it is important to understand their child's needs so that they can help the team and make informed decisions that continue to help their child. For example, if an academic test indicates that their child struggles with reading comprehension, parents can use that data to request speech and language support or classroom accommodations, such as extra time to complete reading and writing tasks. And the last step is the annual and triennial reviews and progress monitoring. After the initial IEP meeting, you will meet with your child's IEP team on the annual basis to review your child's progress and modify the plans as needed. You can also request an IEP meeting at any time throughout the school year if you feel there is an issue that must be resolved by the IEP team. Every 3 years, your child will undergo a new round of assessment to determine his or her continuing eligibility for special education services. You will be presented with this information at the triennial meeting. Often there is enough existing data, thus allowing the team to simply review the data and determine that eligibility should continue. In addition to formal meetings, you should also be in constant communication with your child's special education teacher. He or she should be monitoring your child's progress on academic and other goals. He or she should be monitoring your child's progress on academic and other goals and be prepared to present you with updates regularly. The K-12 instructional programs. No two students are the same. Each student and each student's abilities are different. The purpose of the Special Education Service Center instruction is to assist special education teachers and district staff in working collaboratively with the students and families to develop and implement the individualized education program that is tailored to students' individual needs. Although it was once believed that students with disabilities should be taught together in separate settings apart from other children, we now know that all students benefit when all students are educated together in integrated classrooms and schools. The Core Curriculum Instructional Program is a snapshot, archive, and common core state standards under the K-12 General Education Curriculum. Moderate to severe instructional programs. These programs includes alternative curriculum integration and autism program support and provide students with significant cognitive disabilities opportunities to learn and be prepared for meaningful living and or employment. Positive behavior support. Families of students with disabilities may face behavioral issues and challenges that come up in school. A team approach of school staff working with families and students is the best approach to academic success. The transition services from the DOTS. The transition process prepares students for adult life by focusing on the areas of post-secondary education, employment, community participation, and independent living skills. The early intervention specialists on the career path. Many early intervention specialists begin their careers as elementary or preschool teachers. Those who are already possess the elementary teaching credential can often earn a supplemental special education credential, allowing them to begin working with the youngest students very quickly. All credentialed early intervention teachers have at least a bachelor's degree and many earn degrees in child's development, early education, or liberal studies. Early intervention specialists are often some of the most fulfilled and satisfied teachers within the field of special education, and many stays in their positions for the entirety of their careers. Some earn administrative credentials and obtain positions as special education administrators. Others leave public education to start or join private organizations that provide services to students with special needs. And that would be the last part of my discussion. I hope you learned a lot from it. Stay safe and healthy, and thank you for listening.